Welcome to the kingdom. I'm Chris, and this is Good Enough Gaming. Howdy folks, and welcome to this unscripted review video that's actually going to come in two parts. I've had a number of STL creators reach out to me and ask me if I would be willing to review some of their STL files and tell folks what I think because they've designed files specifically for One Page Rules. So that's what we're going to do today. So first up, we're going to take a look at an army that can be used in Age of Fantasy, and then the second half of the video we'll look at an army, or I should say a fleet, that can be used in Warfleets. So stick around for both, I hope, but if you're more interested in one or the other, the latter half of the video is going to be for Warfleets, the first half is going to be for Age of Fantasy. So first off, the Daka Daka store reached out to me to say a little bit about their stuff. I think that's pretty cool. So here's the idea. They're starting a campaign in July based around fantasy dwarves. But what's cool is this campaign isn't just one army, it's two. So according to the story behind this campaign, two clans of dwarves came together for the equivalent of Dwarven Oktoberfest. And at the competition over who brews the best ale, there was a bit of a disagreement, and the clans basically erupted in a civil war. And so the campaign now isn't for one dwarf army, but for two. And based on what I've been reading on the website, I'll put a link to it below, and what I've been looking at in the model STLs they provided me, you've got the one, which is your standard mountain dwarf, hill dwarf, fantasy dwarf. You know, when you usually think of dwarven armies in tabletop games, this is the aesthetic you picture. And then the other one is more like a chaos dwarf, havoc dwarf. So you're getting kind of the good and the bad, the light and the dark, you know, the angelic and the diabolic, what have you. So let's take a look at these in a little bit more detail. So starting off with this guy here, your basic warrior. I like that the shield is simple, but still has a nice striking design. You paint that shield with a strong color background and then use something metallic there. I think that'll look really, really good. It's got enough detail to make the model interesting, but not so much detail that it's going to be cumbersome. So you could still add color on the sleeves. Let me get a pointer here. You're able to add some color on the sleeves, or you can maybe color the armor. But I think this guy would paint relatively fast, but still look good. They're in 28mm scale, and I believe you would say they are historic size. So if we compare him to this one from Highlands Miniatures, you can see that the Highlands Miniatures one, it's not a lot taller, but it's bulkier. You can especially tell if we rotate him and take a look at the fist. So this is what we would call 28mm heroic, I believe, whereas this is more 28mm historic. So you can definitely tell they're both dwarves, but this looks more like something you'd see in an anime, you know, very, very chunky, very strong, whereas this one looks like it's going for what you would see in Lord of the Rings or something like that, more realistic. But in both cases, I think they share a lot in common in that they're simple enough to be effective, but not so simple as to be basic. So as for the other model, here we've got our Havoc Gunner. I love the boomstick. It's like, it looks like a mix between steampunk and an old school blunderbuss. The gladiator type mask there gives it that really kind of mysterious, not so friendly look to him. He definitely has a different feel as opposed to this guy. And that's why I said it reminds me more of the Chaos or the Havoc dwarves. As far as the printing, both of these files they gave me were pre-supported, and I simply tossed them in my printer and printed them out. Made no changes to see how they would come out. The previous model, this one here, came out perfect. No problems whatsoever, printed as a single piece. I didn't have to assemble anything. This guy, I would say, was 90% effective. The only problem was here, the pauldron here didn't quite fully finish, and you can tell by looking at the other side there. And if we rotate him to the side, you can see what happened a little bit there. So that could very well be me. As I said, I'm still not an expert at 3D printing, so maybe it was something, settings, maybe I accidentally walked too hard and shook the printer, or shook the floor and the printer, and that's what messed that up. I don't know, but I didn't even notice that little error until I started filming this. and was checking camera and, you know, where's this guy gonna go? And suddenly I went, oh wait, that didn't print fully. But other than that, I mean, from 3 feet away, if this guy's in a rank of 20, you're not gonna notice that. So they printed up very, very nice. Now they sent me 3 STLs, those 2, and then 1 more here of a character, so we could get a look at a model that's gonna have a little bit more detail. Now I'm guessing this guy is a character for the Chaos or the Havoc Dwarves, because he's got fire coming out of his head, and usually you don't have that for regular Dwarves. So you can see there's a heightened level of detail. You can spend a little more time on this guy to make him look a little more, you know, prestigious as opposed to rank and file. And of course, the heroic rock. That's how you know he's a character or a hero. This guy also was a single piece, printed perfectly, no problems whatsoever, at least none that I've found yet. And the rock, well, 2 pieces. The rock was 1 piece, the model was a 2nd piece. So it came out really well. And I think these would be a fantastic addition to any Dwarven army. If you're looking to get started, it's pretty good. It would be a great army to begin with. If you're looking for Chaos or Havoc, that would be another great one to go with. So my overall impression of these to Daka Daka is, I think you got a good product to sell here, and I wish them the best of luck with the Kickstarter campaign. So I'll put a link to it below. As I said, it doesn't start until July, but they already have a webpage for it. You can go down, you can read about the story, you can take a look at some of the models they've already released. There's not many, but if you go to their My Mini Factory store, you can see they have been making STLs for a long time, and it's quality stuff. So you can expect the same kind of thing coming from these. Okay, and here we have them finally painted. So let's start with this guy. All right, so I painted this one so that it would match the color scheme that I had for my army. So here's one of the ones I have of the Highlands miniatures. I think I may have used a different blue, a lighter blue for this one and darker one, but still, they paint up nicely. Let's see if I can get that. Right, exact same thing. Did a silver base coat, then a black wash, and then dry brush to give the metal a bit of a worn look. Then the cloth painting a blue, 1 layer of highlight. I did 2 on this, but 1 on this. And other than a very slight height difference that you can see, a whole unit of these would fit into this army and no one would know the wiser. It was not difficult to paint. It primed well, it took the paint well, and I think now that it's finished, I think it looks good. It was also very, very, I don't want to say simple to paint, but since I did just a basic paint scheme, this was not difficult at all. I think this guy start to finish maybe took 30 minutes. So, I don't know, multiply that by 20 minute a block, yeah, that sounds like a lot, but if you're batch painting, you can get through 5 or 10 of these really fast. So they were easy to print, easy to paint. So that's that guy. Then here, for the Havoc Dwarf, the Chaos Dwarf, I kind of just came up with the paint scheme here on the fly, like a darker blue for the metal, a dark red. I wanted it to be the opposite of this guy. This guy's very bright, so this one I wanted to be very kind of grungy and dark. Like, if any of you have seen that battle report, I can't remember if it's posted yet, or the army showcase I did for that commission of Havoc Dwarves, I kind of used the same idea for these. As far as, you know, the kind of bronze color for the metal, the red for the cloth. But I think that looks pretty good too. And again, this guy was even faster to paint, because I did dry brushing for the basic black armor here, a little bit of kind of a blue, a teal, darker one, and then the red and the gold trim. I mean, this didn't take very long to paint at all. And then over here, we have the character. So I spent a little more time on him. I'm not happy with the beard. It didn't come out the way I wanted it to. It looks kind of messy, so I apologize for that. But everything else, I think it came out really nicely. Looks good. There was, as I said when I was reviewing the models initially, there's just enough detail to make him interesting. But this guy isn't covered with amulets and flasks and vials and etchings. I mean, the most of that detail was on this guy here. You can see what I painted gold around his armor, the trim. That wasn't a big deal at all. That was very, very quick. But it added a lot of character. Whereas this guy, being a hero, I wanted to give him a little bit more attention. But it wasn't that hard. Right, so this guy probably took an hour-ish for me to paint. And you always want to give your characters more attention because they're the only ones that you're going to have. So, final conclusion then. If any of you are interested in starting Dwarf Army, Havoc Dwarf Army, here's a chance to get both of them at the same time. I think they're solid models. They have enough detail to be interesting and intriguing, but not so much that you're going to drown in trying to paint it all. They also don't look too simplistic. You know, you have a basic design on the shield. You have a basic texture on the armor. There's some folds in the fabric there. There's enough to give these models some life. But you can still paint very quickly. In fact, I did all three of these guys kind of as a batch. I did them in a little under 2 hours. All three. Now, I don't know if for some of you might say, oh my gosh, that's a long time. Some of you might say, wow, that was really fast. But for me, that's not too bad. Let's take a look at the other thing that I got. So, one of you viewers, after seeing one of my Warfleets games, contacted me and said, you know, I'm an STL creator and I have a series of ships and fleets that I've created specifically for OPR Warfleets. So these come from Brandon Roullett. Pardon me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly. I'll have a link to his My Mini Factory page in the description as well. And he sent me 2 different fleets as well as STL files for tokens and bases. So what I've done here is I printed up one of the ships for the Battle Brothers fleet. I believe this is a Gladius. It's a mid-class ship. And printed up the accompanying base to go with it so you guys can see how this worked out. Now, before we get too far into this, I do want to point out that the crack that you see there, that is entirely my fault, as is the crack on the hull of the ship there. I was not as gentle as I should have been. I made a few mistakes trying to get these off the build plate, and it was my fault. I didn't align them and put them on the plate as well as I should have. I'm still making rookie mistakes with my printing, so it's not a reflection of the print. It's user error. That's my fault. So as far as the model itself, I think it's got a nice amount of detail to give it some variety. It'll be fairly easy to paint. Spray it a nice dark color and then dry brush and then give some highlights maybe to the prow here or to the turret, something like that. But I think this would be a nice, simple to paint, but it'll still look good. Right, and this, as I said, it's a medium. They have smaller ships, which are probably about that much in between, and then they have big ones, which almost didn't fit on my build plate unless I turned it diagonally. So there's a lot of variety. So far from what I've seen from when he sent me the files, he had a Battle Brothers fleet and he had a Human Defense Force fleet. And all of them have about this level of detail. And for the Battle Brothers fleet, there were, I think, 9 different, not just classes, but within small, medium, and large, there were 3 different ships to pick from. He tried to design it so it aligns perfectly with the One Page Rules Army book for the Battle Brothers fleets. And each fleet comes with the stands, and then the bases are already pre-designed with the firing arcs. And the nice thing is, while it was a little tough to wedge that in there, which you probably want, the hole on the base is larger, so it just drops in there nice and easy. And now you've got your firing arcs. So I learned when I was playing and filming those first 2 games that firing arcs are a lot more important than I thought they would be, and it's very handy to have these clearly marked there. Plus, the base is large enough that you could put dice or tokens right on top of the base, objective markers, anything like that. So when you're moving this thing around, you just have to move around the base and everything else you need is right there on it. So I think they're great. If any of you are interested, as I said, I'll have a link to his My Mini Factory down below. You can check him out and see about building your own fleet. All right, so there you have it. 2 STL creators creating stuff for One Page Rules. I think this is awesome. One Page Rules is getting bigger. We're getting more options for different kinds of armies and models, lots of variety, and that can't but be a good thing. So check out both of the creators down here. I'm sure you'll find at least something that you can use in your army because they both have quite a bit to offer. In the meantime, thanks for watching the video. Keep your dice on the table, and it doesn't have to be perfect as long as it's good enough.